Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dave TV. It's the 17th of August. 17th of August, 2012. 2012. Okay. A special Paul Farhi edition of Dave TV here on DCRTV.com. Yesterday, Washington Post. What do they call it? An editor's note. Not a correction. It's an editor's note. In yesterday's Washington Post, an August 14th style section about Fareed Zakaria's 2008 book, The Post-American World, incorrectly stated that Zakaria failed to cite the source of a quotation taken from another book. In fact, Zakaria did credit the other work by Clyde V. Prestowitz. Endnotes crediting Prestowitz were contained in the hardcover and paperback editions of Zakaria's book. The book should have been examined. The Post should have examined copies of the book and should not have published the article. We regret the error and apologize to Fareed Zakaria. Now, I don't know how many times you see an editor's note or a correction where they say the Post should have examined copies of the Post should not, where the Post actually says we should not have published an article. The entire premise of an article was wrong. You know, you don't see that very often in the Washington Post. The entire premise of an article was wrong. We shouldn't have published the article. You know, that's a little more than just, oh, hey, there was a little error in the article. The entire premise of the article was wrong. Okay, now what the Washington Post doesn't do in its corrections or its editor's notes or whatever is they never tell you who wrote the article. You know, it says the article made the mistake. The article reported this. Well, you know, it's like saying the SUV crashed into the other car. There's a guy who somebody wrote that article, and the article was written by Paul Farhi. He's a long-time, really, I like Paul. I mean, he writes well. He's a good writer, and I've had my disputes with Paul. You know, there have been times where, you know, I've broken news, and then he gets it a day or two later and doesn't necessarily credit my website, and we've tussled over the years. I'm not saying, you know, you know, it's happened. I've corrected him on a number of issues in the Post. You know, there have been issues where he gets the call letters wrong. Remember, what did he call it? Channel 9 used to be WDVM, and he wrote an article where it's WDMV, and you know, there are times where he gets the WTOP frequencies wrong and stuff like that. But anyhow, so Paul Farhi writes this article. It turns out he didn't look at the end notes and whatever, and basically the whole article shouldn't have been run according to the Washington Post, blah, 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 blah. All right, you know, so there. So then, we come to today's paper. Of course, the style section, which has almost nothing on the front page but a giant picture. You know, that's the way the style section is. And when you go flip through it here, oh, look at that. Way down at the bottom, C4 is an article here about, it says, basically, CNN is restating Zakaria after his suspension, basically saying, you know, we checked out all of his works and his writings, and we don't see anything here that's really that big of a deal, and we're not suspending him, and, you know, da-da-da-da-da. But the interesting thing about that article is it's a Reuters piece, okay? See there, Reuters. They didn't have Farhi back in to finish that. Now, Farhi did 2 articles on Zakaria. He did the original article, and then he did the one that shouldn't have been run. That was last week. And you think, okay, so he's been on the beat, so maybe he should cover this. No, they just used a wire service thing here. So you wonder, what's up with Paul Farhi at the Post? Interesting. One of the things I think is even more interestinger is Erik Wemple. Now, Erik Wemple used to work at the Washington City Paper, and I always liked Erik Wemple. You know, he wrote really cool things when he was at City Paper. He was kind of a media, he wrote a lot of media stuff. And one of his targets when he was working at Washington City Paper was the Washington Post. He always was slamming the Post. And his commentary was right on. He was excellent. You know, he the way he would do that. If you can hunt back on those old city paper columns he did, really good commentary about the Washington Post. In fact, a lot better than that mushmouth ombudsman. But anyhow, so then he goes on to TBD, which was a total flop. And then he gets hired by the Washington Post to be its media commentator. And most of the stuff he writes, I think, is pretty good. But I think what's happened is now that he's on the Post payroll, he's really shut up about writing about the Post. And I'm like, puts him in a funny position because occasionally big media stories do come along involving the Post, like this Paul Farhi story, and he just doesn't cover it. So I tweeted yesterday on my Twitter machine. I tweeted, what did I write? What did I say to, I don't know. Let me see here what I wrote. Twitter. Come on, Twitter. Come up. I wrote something like, hey, Erik, if Paul Farhi had worked for Politico, you'd be all over that story. Hey, I would write that. I wrote that. I said, hey, if Paul Farhi worked for Politico and Politico apologized for an entire story that it shouldn't have been run, because the Post doesn't like Politico, Erik Wemple probably would have been all over that story with 3 or 4 or 5 different little postings, like he's been known to do in the past. And I said, you really should have covered it. And Erik Wemple writes me back yesterday, quote, hey, Dave, good point here. But WAPO, remember, has an umbo who reliably picks up these things. I occasionally chime in, unquote. That's a cop-out. C-O-P-O-U-T, cop-out. He's afraid to, he's getting his paycheck from the Post. He doesn't want to make the Post management unhappy. There's a funny relationship there between Farhi and Wemple. It's funny because sometimes Erik Wemple will break a story and write it up on his Post web blog, and then Farhi does the print piece. So there's some weird dynamics going on over there, company dynamics and stuff like that. But, hey, Erik, just be a man. Be a man and write about it. This is a story. This is actually a bigger story than a lot of the media is making it. I think Farhi has a lot of friends out there in the journo community, and they're kind of sweeping this under the rug. But I think the fact that a newspaper would actually apologize for an entire article that we shouldn't have run it. That's a big deal. Damn it. Hey, Romanesco, get on that. Quit being your lily-livered, ass-kissing journo butt. I like Romanesco too, but sometimes he's just so insider, and you can just tell who he likes and who he doesn't like, and his bias shows through. Hey, it's fun covering. It's fun watching the journo community, and who they like and who they don't like. I've always said about my website, I don't write for journalists. I write for everybody. I write for the common man. That's who I write for. I'm not writing at a journalism insider site like FishbowlDC where they sit there and kiss ass for all the journos and, get 100 page views a day. I don't know. What the heck? I don't know. There's something weird going on. Maybe it's time to say bye-bye, Farhi. Farhi's done some good stuff, but there's a certain sloppiness to some of his work that I've noticed over the years. Wasn't there was a piece he did a while back where he took something off the web, ran it as a big piece, and then it turned out that it was from a posting that was a year old, and that his news that he reported that he took from this thing was a year old news. Remember that? That was a couple years ago. I remember that one. That was kind of an embarrassing thing, wasn't it? Ay. What? I just got this strange thing. What? Brian Wilson. What? Brian Wilson is the Joe Biden of WMAL. Brian Wilson is the Joe Biden of WMAL. Did Bill Hess meet with Cumulus Suits, and they're thinking about replacing Joe Biden with Hillary Clinton? Wait a minute. No, wait. They're not replacing Joe Biden with Hillary Clinton. They're replacing Brian Wilson with Mary Catherine Ham. Wait. Oh, man, it's all confusing. Is WMAL going to replace Brian Wilson with Mary Catherine Ham? And, so that... Oh, I'm getting it confused. All these things, of Joe Biden maybe getting replaced with Hillary Clinton. No, wait. Here's Brian Wilson going on the air and speculating about how Joe Biden might get, going to bring in Hillary Clinton instead of Joe Biden. Well, he ought to worry himself, because I wouldn't be surprised if they put Mary Catherine Ham in his place. Ay, what do I know? And FishbowlDC. What do they name me? They put me down. They have their summer superlatives. And they mentioned something like I am, what did they call me? They said they don't like the way I look. Betsy Rothstein, who's an aging old fishbowl. BOWEL, fishbowl.com. She's an aging woman. What is she? Still single? Never married? Was she ever married? I don't know. But she's kind of, wrinkled up, old, aging woman. And she's the one who's criticizing the way I look. Let's see. I am most in need of a makeover. Dave Hughes, the child molester look went out in the 80s. Really? Man. Okay. The beautiful Betsy Rothstein wrote that. What was it? A couple years ago, I was voted as something like the most dangerous media personality in the Washington market by FishbowlDC. And guess what? I won. They had a little vote there with me and 4 or 5 other people, and I won. But crazy. I guess they need something to juice up their traffic, because who's going to FishbowlDC? It has no traffic. All right, folks. Thanks for watching Dave TV for this 17th of August, 2012. Live long and prosper.